Plantar fasciitis is inflammation and pain in your heel right around this area, the bottom of the foot. And in this video, I'm going to go through the real reasons you get plantar fasciitis and give you unique exercises to address the root causes for long-term relief. And it doesn't include orthotics, static stretching, or calf raises. Coach E from Precision Movement here, and if you're here for plantar fasciitis, then I'm here to help you out and to help you get long-term relief. The first thing I want to get into is some research on why you get plantar fasciitis in the first place. And once you have that understanding, the treatments that work and the treatments that don't work become very clear. The first study I want to cover is called Foot Posture and Ankle Dorsiflexion as Risk Factors for Developing Achilles Tendinopathy and Plantar Fasciitis. In this study, the researchers had 108 patients with plantar fasciitis and 114 patients with Achilles tendinitis, and they compared them to the same number of patients in two control groups, never having had these injuries. The researchers measured foot posture, and it was assessed using the Foot Posture Index, classifying the feet into three different categories. What the researchers found was that abnormal foot posture was associated with an increased risk for sustaining both Achilles tendinitis and plantar fasciitis, and hyperpronation was the major reason for this association. This right here is a major finding because if you have hyperpronation or overpronation, which I've talked about, and I'll link a video that I've done previously on this subject, then you're at a great risk of plantar fasciitis. Now, hyperpronation or overpronation is when your foot everts, turns out, and you get into a little more ankle dorsiflexion. Before I get into why overpronation is more associated with plantar fasciitis, let me cover one more study. This study was titled Arch Height Flexibility is Associated with Plantar Fascia Tension During Running. The researchers studied 22 male participants, and they took two measures, arch height index and arch height flexibility. The significant finding in the study was that a moderate positive correlation was observed between arch height flexibility and plantar fascia tension. What this study shows is that as you go from sitting to standing, there's more load on your feet. And as you go from sitting to standing, your arch flattens out, and that causes an increase in tension in the plantar fascia. And the more that your foot flattens out, so the greater the arch height flexibility, the more tension there is in the plantar fascia. Now let's look at both of these studies and we can come to some conclusions as to why we get plantar fascia. The first study showed that people who have more overpronated feet have a higher risk of plantar fasciitis. And the second study showed that the more flexible somebody's foot was, the higher the risk of plantar, or the greater the tension on the plantar fascia. So what this shows is that if we cannot maintain good foot posture and a good foot arch, we're at a greater risk of plantar fasciitis. And the final study I'll briefly mention is the heavier you are, the greater your risk of plantar fasciitis. Now that we understand this, let's look at the most common treatments for plantar fasciitis. There's acupuncture, shockwave therapy, PRP, cortisone, wouldn't recommend that at all. There's static stretching of the foot and the ankle, and there's calf raises. And probably the most popular one is orthotics. Now when you look at this, none of these things address overpronation or a weak arch muscle. And that's why the exercises I'm going to present to you are so effective and will give you results long term. The first exercise we're going to go through is foot joint mobilization. And that's to ensure that all of these joints, all these 33 joints and 26 bones in the bottom of the foot or in the foot can move properly. And if these don't move properly and the joints are stuck, then we can't get proper function of the muscles. So this is a prerequisite to the exercises we're gonna do later to activate and wake up the sleepy and weak muscles. This technique, you're just gonna work some different movements of the foot. So first thing I like to do is just wiggle the toes and stretch out the toes, bend them, flex them, extend them, stretch them out like that. Straighten them, just kind of work them around and mobilize. Next, we're gonna work the metatarsals. The metatarsals are under here. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna start by grabbing the four lateral toes and then the big toe metatarsal and wiggle it a few times. And then you just slide over and you'll wiggle the next joint. And then you'll wiggle over the next joint. And then you're grabbing the four medial toes and the pinky toe and wiggling the metatarsal joint between those areas. So you just work that a little bit. Next, we're gonna do a little bit of ringing. Grab the midfoot, grab around the metatarsals, and just wring it out like you're wringing out a sponge. Do that a few times. Then you can do the same thing. Grab the midfoot and the heel and just kind of wring it out and wiggle it. like so. And those are the movements that you can do to mobilize the joints of the feet. So what I recommend is you just cycle through those movements for 1 to 2 minutes on each foot. You might as well do both, even if you only have plantar fasciitis on one side, and then you can go to the next exercise to wake up the arch muscles. The second thing we're going to do is perform some active self-myofascial release of the plantar fascia and the muscles in the bottom of the foot. You want to use a massage ball for this, and one note is do not work directly over an acutely painful plantar fascia. So when the pain is right here and it's burning and it's really severe, don't work too aggressively over that area. Work around it. And as your pain goes down and you can tolerate a little bit of pressure on there, then you can do so. But if not, if you're working over there too much, then you're going to further inflame an already inflamed area. So for this technique, there's 2 different things I'm going to show you. The first is our classic active self-myofascial release for the plantar fascia. Start by wrapping your forefoot around the ball, and you can use support of the wall here because it's not a balance exercise. Then you're going to apply some pressure and roll the ball towards the heel as you extend the toes, keeping the foot as relaxed as possible at the bottom of the foot, and get to as far as you can go. So again, don't go over that heel if it's really painful. And then you repeat. And what you can think of is do each toe, the line from each toe to the heel, do each of those lines. And you just repeat that for 1 to 2 minutes, applying as much pressure as you can tolerate, going right over to the lateral or the pinky toe, the smallest little piggy. So you do that for about a minute. Next, we're going to do a little bit of cross friction massage. And as you get better and as your pain decreases, you can go more and more right over this area. But until, if you're really acute and your pain is pretty severe, do it more around the painful spot. So the cross friction massage is the same kind of thing, except you're going to move your foot sideways. Applying pressure, moving it sideways, back and forth, just around the heel area, not so much on the forefoot here. And you can do it above and below the site of pain. And you do that for about a minute. And what we're doing here is we're mobilizing the tissues and decreasing the tension on the site of injury, on the site of pain. And that decreased tension is going to help to relieve the pain. And as you do this with the next exercises, which are going to strengthen the muscles there, you're going to further reduce the load that goes through the plantar fascia, and that's how you get long-term relief. Now we're going to do the short and skinny foot exercise, which I've shown so many times on this channel here. And if you have trouble with this exercise, I suggest you see another video that we have more beginner exercises to help you to be able to do this exercise. But since you're here with me now, let's try it out. For this technique, you start off by, if you can spread your toes out without using your hands, then do so. Otherwise, just spread your toes out using your fingers here, like so. From here, you're going to do 2 things with your foot. First, you're going to make it skinny across this area. So think about squeezing the muscles to bring the metatarsals together. And then you're going to make the foot short. So bringing the metatarsals or the forefoot towards the heel. And that creates that arch in the foot. Hold it for 5 to 10 seconds. And then you gradually let it go. And I'll show you a side view here so you can see the arch raise up. So I'm going to spread the toes out, and then I'm going to make it skinny and short. And I'm going to put a little bit of pressure over that foot, just a little bit to start, and you might feel those muscles wake up even more. Hold that for 5 to 10 seconds, and then gradually relax. The other thing you want to do is you want to keep, when you're standing on there, keep some pressure underneath the metatarsal area, under there, not all of the weight on the heel. So you want to keep about 50% of the weight on the heel and 50% of weight over the metatarsals or the forefoot, so you're balanced and we can get the strength needed in that arch, in those arch muscles, the intrinsic foot muscles. If we don't keep any weight on the forefoot, all our weight's back on the heel, we're not going to develop the strength that we need to be able to support the arch as we walk. The fourth exercise is going to be done after you've developed some strength control in the intrinsic foot muscles through the short and skinny foot exercise. And it's going to help you to take that control and that strength and apply it to a movement pattern that will transfer to life sport in the gym. And that movement pattern is the lunge. And the exercise we're going to do is the reverse lunge with a few tweaks, because we're going to go in different directions so we can start to train that control of the foot and the ankle to avoid overpronation. So the standard reverse lunge is standing up tall, stepping back, keeping my weight evenly distributed between the front and the back of the foot, and stepping up using mostly my front foot. And then you alternate. Switch sides, and you alternate. You're not letting your knee cave in or out, like so. And you can definitely let your knee go forward, over in front of the toes to work the ankle dorsiflexion, as long as you can keep the weight balanced between your forefoot and your heel. If your heel pops up when you're doing this, then don't do that. You only go as far as you can with the knee forward, where you can maintain the heel to the floor and maintain some pressure through the heel. So that's the standard reverse lunge. Now what we're also going to do is we're going to add some directions, some stepping out and stepping in. So stepping in and across like a curtsy, same thing, keeping the pressure on the heel, keeping the knee in line here over the foot. Don't let it come out here. And then we're going to step back to an angle. Same thing, knee is over top of the foot. You're allowing the knee to travel forward in front of the toes, and you're keeping even pressure through the heel and the forefoot. Now the whole time you're doing this, you've got that short and skinny foot going. So you're not letting the arch muscles fall and the arch collapse. You're keeping that strength and stability through the foot via the intrinsic foot muscles. So no matter what direction you go in, that foot has to stay planted. Now, one thing you can do when you're starting out is just do one side at a time. So you're keeping my active arch on the front foot, and that way it's easier to ensure that it stays on. Because if you're alternating all the time and you don't have good control yet, you might not be able to get it on in time, and then you'll be doing these lunges with flat feet essentially. So start with doing one side at a time, and you can just switch between the 3 different variations of lunges. And this is going to help you to develop that control no matter what plane of motion you're moving in, whether you're moving to the side, front and back, you're able to maintain control of that arch muscle, of the arch, as you're doing a movement that is great for transferring to life and sport. There you have 4 exercises that will help you get to the root causes of plantar fasciitis for long-term relief. The final thing I'll mention that some people have asked me about and is really beneficial is the concept of barefoot, whatever you're doing, barefoot walking, barefoot running, barefoot exercising. Now, as you can see from all the videos that I have here, I'm always in bare feet, and I think it's great to be able to go barefoot as long as going barefoot doesn't cause you pain, because if it causes you pain, you don't have good intrinsic foot muscle strength and function yet, good enough to be able to go barefoot. Now, once you start to wake up those muscles with the short and skinny foot and these other exercises, then you can start to go barefoot walking. Just start off slow. You can just do a minute of walking around the house on carpet to start and progressively go up as long as it doesn't cause pain. I don't do any barefoot distance running, but I do some running in my 5-toes shoes, some sprints, some short distance exercises like that. And I also always exercise doing squats and lunges in bare feet. So by gradually increasing how much barefoot activity you're able to incorporate into your everyday life and your workouts, you're going to ensure that those intrinsic foot muscles stay strong and healthy for the long term. To recap the routine we went through today, we started off with foot joint mobilization, and you're doing that for about a minute on each side. Then we went to active self-myofascial release for the plantar fascia, do that for 1 minute per foot, and add some cross friction for each foot as well. Next, we went to the short and skinny foot exercise, do 2 sets of 3 to 5 reps per side, holding for 5 to 10 seconds. And we finished off with the reverse lunge and different variations, do anywhere from 1 to 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps per. You can start off performing this routine on a daily basis for 1 to 2 weeks, and then drop down to 2 to 3 times a week for another 2 to 4 weeks. So there you have my take on plantar fasciitis. I'd love to know your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and most importantly, your results. So if you do this routine and you do it over a couple of weeks, then come back to this video and let me know how it went for you. Now, I've got a couple of other related videos for you here and here. And if you want to make sure you get the best program possible for your foot or ankle pain, then get the foot and ankle pain solution program right here. It's got concepts and exercises like I showed you here, but progressed over months with many more exercises.